Okay, so that's the latest in the world of sports. And as I had hinted earlier on, it ushers us into the second hour of the show, where we'll focus on Kenya's fight against corruption. I'm joined by the man at the helm of EACC, Dr. David Oginde, the chairperson of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, where he'll lay bare the strategy they're using in the fight against corruption, the gains we have made in the anti-graft war, and some of the challenges that they have faced as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission in this all-important fight. Bwana David Oginde, thank you so much for your time. Karibu to our studios.
Asante.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And I think it would be proper to start right before, and it's off the cuff. You were cemented in that position on May. It's 4 months down the line. How has your experience been in the fight against corruption in that particular position?
Thank you. Yeah, it is 4 months, almost exactly.
Yes.
It's been a very interesting experience, I would say, because some of the things that I assumed I know, I found that I didn't know as much. For example, the levels of corruption that I thought have turned out to be much worse, I would say, than I actually imagined.
Yeah.
But I've also found a commission that is made up of very dedicated men and women, most of them young men and women who are very patriotic in spirit to fight this vice. Mm-hmm. And that has been very, very encouraging for me as one who has just come into that space. So in the last 4 months, it has been more of a learning experience, trying to understand how the commission operates, how we deal with different kinds of issues, but also being faced with the reality of some of the cases that we are dealing with, and participating in decision making on the same, taking some people to the office of the public prosecutor for prosecution, pursuing others in different other ways. That has been a very new space for me as one who has been in a church environment. Yeah. So I would say that is the time, but also to see some of the gains we have made in that time, some of the assets that we have recovered, individuals that we have arrested. That doesn't sound very good, but it's again all the same. Some disruptions that we have made to what could have been otherwise loss of public resources. Those kinds of things really give you encouragement that it can be done.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really proper. So it goes without saying you have your work cut out for you, bearing in mind how big of a vice corruption is in the country. But generally, bearing in mind the 4 months you've been in office, would you say we're making the right strides towards eradicating corruption within our borders? And if so, kindly quantify for Kenyans to actually be at par with the EACC.
Yes, we are making progress, a lot of progress as such. Maybe not to the extent that both we in the commission and the general public would expect or would want to see.
Yeah.
And this is because corruption in this country, just like you've said, is very pervasive. It is not in one place where you can go and attack and you know you have scattered those people. It is across the board, and it is from the smallest level of bribery to multi-billion theft of public resources. So when you look at it in that way, even what would look like a very significant gain looks like too small in the eyes of the public. For example, we have mentioned that just in the recent past, we have been able to recover over 24 billion Kenya shillings in different areas. We have pursuing about 34 billion that we are about to also clear. We have prosecuted several cases. But when you compare that with what the public is hearing, the general feeling is like, that is so small, you know. But I was talking in the Editors Guild the other day. It is when you bring that to reality that you begin to see that actually there's some significance. For example, just recently, we were visiting one of the assets that the Commission was able to recover, not too far from where we are now, just in the backyard of this place, where 60 acres of land that was grabbed by 5 individuals. We were able to get it back. And now the low-cost housing project is being brought up in that place. And if you go there and just see the kind of project that is going on there and the impact that is going to have in society, you can see that this was a worthwhile effort to recover that property. I was in Malindi, and not Malindi, Mombasa, and we went to visit some of, again, assets. Kenyans are very audacious in their actions. We visit some of the houses that belong to government, estate, not just houses, actually an estate that belong to government, but somebody has taken that to belong to them. You can see the numbering, the government numbering is right there. They have not even removed them. And somebody is claiming, these are my houses. But you can see this is the normal government numbering of houses with stroke this and stroke this and stroke that.
I get you.
It is very clear. It's in an asset register somewhere.
Yes.
And we were able to get that back. Right here in Machakos. We were in Machakos. I was in Machakos not too long ago. Again, visiting our region office there. And we went around. And right at that particular time, again, an audacious Kenyan had actually gone and was throwing out one of the judges at Machakos, saying, this is my property. A judge who is actually, interestingly, is in charge of land and environment court. Somebody comes one evening and wants to throw her out of a government office, again, clearly labeled. You can see, you know, the old government houses were unique.
Yes.
Are not like any other houses. But you see it right there. And again, our officers on the ground were able to act on that quickly, and that property was restored. They went to, guess who? The OCPD's house. They were taking that also. That's the kind of audacity that we are talking about.
And what emboldens such characters? Because you wouldn't make such a move, especially you're talking about a sitting judge, OCPD, you name it. You wouldn't make such moves if you didn't have certain protection. So just to use a loose tongue to it.
Yes.
So what would you say emboldens such? And are we breaking the whole chain system, or are we just going for the individuals who are at the chain end, who are actually, you know, taking this assets to themselves? What about those who protect them, you know?
Well, you have moved ahead to try and answer your own question by saying some people are protected. But what I would say is this. It is the same question that I asked myself in the first few weeks of my being in this office, because sitting there and listening to some of the cases that are brought, and just like you think to yourself, what would cause somebody to do something like this? Is it that I'm either naive or coward, you know, that I can't move on to throw out a judge, you know, or to throw out a senior police officer out of their government houses, which I know for sure this is a government house, but I come there and say, this is my house, you move out. What emboldens those people? And that is a question that I asked myself, like I said, and just looking at the nature of corruption and the cases that we were dealing with, And I came to the conclusion that there are several factors that seem to be driving corruption in our country. And I've said this in other fora. The first one I would say is impunity. Impunity is by men and women who have been given positions of authority and use those positions of authority to do outrageous things because somehow they believe that the power that they have, no one can touch them. And so while they are in those positions of authority, they can do anything and nobody can question them. They will run roughshod over people. They will not care about law enforcement agencies because they are using the power that they have. Sometimes it is not that they have been sent. They are acting right on their own, but they give you the impression that there's a greater power behind me, that if you touch me, you will see what will happen. Okay. So that is one of the drivers of corruption that I see in this country. Men and women in positions of authority and abusing that authority to do things that you and I hear of and you just wonder whether this person was in their right mind or not. But then there are also those people who are greedy, are simply driven by greed. People who, and a majority of these people are involved in mega corruptions. The sad thing, and the reason I call it greed, is that a majority of these people are super rich. I mean, if you hear the kind of assets, the kind of companies and projects and things that they are engaged in, you wonder why anybody would still want to go and steal public resources. All right. Because this person already has so much more than you and I can even imagine or think about. But they're still the same people who are still going to steal sometimes very small things and sometimes huge. And you ask yourself, how much can a person possibly have for them to come to the conclusion, I think I have enough? In other countries, men and women who have made their wealth, you find that what they do is to look for places where they can give out and support the needy and the poor with that wealth. Okay. In our system, it is like the more I have, the more I want. And so these people are some of the very stingy guys who will not give you anything. But they just keep accumulating and accumulating. It is a very serious greed. I wish they were in the process also helping other people. Then you say maybe with their wealth they are also supporting the country, but they don't. Very greedy people.
Well, that's quite unfortunate. So you've painted greed, impunity as what's contributing to such a vice in the country. But it would beg the next question, and this is where the public actually paints a picture of EACC as a toothless dog. Unfortunately, this is criticism that has been fronted towards the anti-corruption body time and time again, and this is perhaps fueled by the concept that EACC goes for the small fish. I'm sure you've heard of this, not the big fish, you know? So, and it's quite unfortunate, and we'd like to talk about this, but let's approach it in terms of EACC's capacity to effectively tackle the high magnitude of graft in the country. Do you believe, as a chairperson of EACC, that the body has that capacity to tackle some of these big names who are emboldened by their positions and by the wealth they've already accumulated? Do you have the capacity?
I would say yes and no. Capacity in terms of legal provisions, in terms of the kind of intellectual capacity that we need, the kind of people that we need. I think in terms of quality of people and resources, we do have what it takes to tackle some of this. And I've seen that happen in the short time that I've been there. But in terms of quantity, so the quantitative part of it, we don't. Because like we observed at the beginning, this corruption is widespread, it's deep, it involves so many people. So really, in order for us to even make a dent into it, we need quite a number of people. The commission at the moment has about 700 people on the staff team, everybody included. We are supposed to have about 1,500. That is the the establishment that we have been given. So we are actually less than half of what we should be. So in terms of the number of people that we have that can really make an impact, we don't have that that capacity. And we wish that we had the resources in terms of human resource, because this kind of work requires a lot of investigators who can bring out the data and the information that is necessary to prosecute a case. We need intelligence people who can find out where things are happening and bring that to the fore. We have very few of such kind of personnel, and therefore we are limited to the extent to which we can really cover this. So you find some of our regions, you have only 2 or 3 investigators. You have 1 intelligence officer. How much can those people really do in a whole region that covers several counties? So that, in that sense, we don't have that capacity. But the few that we have are men and women who are very highly qualified, very intelligent people, very dedicated to their work, and they are doing the best that they can do with what we have.
At times that best is seen as a drop in the ocean, and I think that's why you're here, to articulate the steps and the strides you've taken as EACC to root out corruption in the country. And one of the things, when you talk to people in the streets, they mention that, you know, the counties came with the fruits of devolution, but equally it seems like we devolved corruption as well. And that's one of the major points that EACC will be targeting, at least per mainstream media reports. We've definitely seen that you're going for big fish, as they're usually referred to. So let's talk about your focus on the 47 counties right now, which have been referred to as dens of corruption. What do you expect of governors, perhaps who are entrusted with management of county resources and funds, and to those who have crossed the line in terms of pilferage of public funds? What's the message to them, and what's the status update in terms of the cases that you're looking forward to the ODPP and whatnot in terms of prosecution?
Let me just say something about in terms of our strategy, because of the limited resources and capacity that we have. That means, therefore, that we have to prioritize what we do. So we have come up with a priority that focuses on what we call high impact cases. High impact would be a case that involves huge sums or money, or significant persons, or something that is of public interest. Sometimes it may not be that big, but the public seems to have a very special interest on that particular case. So we prioritize those kinds of cases so that with the limited resources we have, we can then tackle those kinds of cases.
Just to cut you short, give us an example. Is that a situation like the Nairobi County junior officer with millions, hundreds of millions of shillings in his bank account? Is that one of the high priority cases?
That's a lot, because if you look at a person who is earning 50,000 and has assets worth 700,000 million, 700 million.
Yes.
I mean, anybody learning about that would want to know, what are you doing about this person? So that would, first of all, is high impact in terms of the monies involved, not necessarily of the person, because the person may not even be known. Even if his picture is put on the papers, nobody knows who this person is. But the monies involved are such that it causes people to wonder what exactly is happening. And unfortunately, in just the last few months that I've been in office, we have arrested two such people from the same county. The other one was 500 million. Again, earning 20,000 per month. This one earning 50,000, 700 million. So you find that it is an indicator that something is actually going on within the county, and this could be just the tip of the iceberg. So when we see those kinds of things, it tells us that we need to perhaps shine our lights a little more in that space. Mm-hmm. We were recently in dealing with cases in Northeast, Eastern, Marsabit, Wajir, Mandera counties, and again you find some of those kinds of situations where procurement processes are really interfered with, and there's a high level of inflation of cost of projects, of tenders. So a project that should have cost, in this one of the cases that we were dealing with recently, that we have just forwarded the matter to the office of the public prosecutor, a fire engine that was supposed to cost about 21 million is being tendered for 62 million. You can see for sure there's something that is just not adding up. Mm-hmm. And like I said, one of the surprises that I have had in the 4 months that I've been there, is how there is such audacity even in the theft. Like when you talk about 21 million to 62 million, if somebody added another 3 million or 5 million to 21, you'd think, yeah, this is a fair thief, as it were, 26. But that's not what Kenyans are doing. It is 3-4 times. We were dealing with another case which was, a tender was for 18 billion, but was escalated to 87. Again, something that is totally outrageous. So you just think to yourself, what kind of greed and impunity combined drives such people that they are able to escalate some of these costs several times, not just adding a little for yourself, you know? So we have looked at the counties, like you have said, and they, unfortunately, it is true that the corruption was devolved to the counties. So a number of counties, therefore, you find that the leadership of these counties seem to be determined to just pilfer the resources that are under their charge. And we are prioritizing some of this, and we are actually making some headway in the same. In the matter of impunity, we are looking at a different way that we are going to approach this, because these men and women seem to be very powerful and almost untouchable, but we have therefore learned how to change tact so that we bypass that power, and just so we are going to see how that works out.
Okay, and we're definitely hopeful. You've mentioned a couple of cases, but then the next obvious question would be, what exactly explains the inordinate delays in terms of prosecution and processing of these graft files at the EACC, and perhaps with the help of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution? Because this is criticism that has been fronted time and time again. We will see the questioning as they cross the famous revolving doors of EACC.
Yes.
They come out, and then the Mtuetu mentality will definitely be there for Kenyans to see.
Right.
But at the end of the day, prosecution is what quantifies the success or the failure of the anti-graft war. So what would you explain to Kenyans perhaps causes this delays, and perhaps this is why you were pushing for prosecutorial powers?
Yes, you have mentioned that. Two things that are major causes of delays, especially in big corruption. The biggest one is the capacity that I talked about, because big corruption are very carefully planned. They are not somebody stumbles across some 20 billion and they decide to take it away. These are very, very carefully planned. Some of them are included in the budget. as they are budgeting for projects. And so they, and I've said this before, from where I sit, they get professionals to work together with them to plan this in such a way that it looks watertight. So by the time you realize that something is going on here, and you begin to try and trace it, it will take you a very long time before you can actually come up with a case that you can forward to the office of the prosecutor and eventually to court. Because the threshold also that is given for proving corruption is very high. Unfortunately, it's very high. It is both good and bad. Good in the sense that people are then not accused for things that they are not done. But bad in the sense that many cases will be lost because of a very small thing. And lawyers, unfortunately, have known how to take advantage of those little clauses, technicalities here and there.
Okay.
So it means, therefore, that you have to work very hard to come up with a case that is watertight, and that process takes a very long time, especially where the corruption networks go beyond the boundaries of Kenya. Then you have to get the cooperation of other nations, other governments, and that takes a very long time because of the diplomatic processes that are involved. And so you can find that a case drags on for a very long time just because you are still trying to put this thing together. And with our capacity, that can take a long time. So you may see the drama, in quotes, of arrests or probing or yes, people coming through the revolving doors. And Kenyans expect that the following day, these people will be in court. In 2 weeks' time, they're in jail. It doesn't happen because some of those is just the beginning of a process. So it will take a while before the actual prosecution can take place. So that very intricate network that these people put in place makes it difficult, especially with our capacity to move cases quickly. But the second one, which you already mentioned, is the linkage between our office and the office of the prosecutor. Because once our cases, our files are fully processed, we have to forward them to the office of the prosecutor. And as you know, he is, that office is charged with all criminal cases in the country. So it is not like they were just sitting there waiting for our files. So our files will just be among the many others that they are dealing with. So the backlog, therefore, that would be in that office is quite huge, understandably, because they too are saying they are not adequately staffed. So that also then becomes another hurdle, just because the cases moving in that office may not be as quick as we expect, and primarily because that is not the only type of case that they're dealing with. So that is why we have thought as a commission that if we were given the mandate to not only investigate but take this all the way to the courts, it could make the process faster. We don't have to go the other way. And this is not to say that the office of the prosecutor interferes or subverts our cases, but just that there's a backlog there, there's a heavy load there. And there are two ways of going about that, which I could say. One is legal, through a legal process, where the act can be changed so that the mandate of taking cases to court directly is given to our office, to the commission, and that would help us process that. There has been fears that that can be abused and could be used to politicize, the cases and so on. But the courts are independent. So even if we were to take a person who is innocent, theoretically speaking, The court is the one to determine. It is not us to determine whether a person is guilty or not. And that can also happen in the office of the prosecutor. So I don't think that it is a very fair argument that if you give EACC prosecutorial powers, they may abuse it. That abuse can happen at any level. So first we have to just be objective and believe that we want these processes to go faster, and this would make it faster. Now, the other way, which we are hoping to discuss with the new prosecutor who has come into office, is doesn't need any legal amendments. Is simply to get him to second some of their staff to our office. Okay. So create a desk at the EACC office. And I give the example of, for example, NHIF, which is the Hospital Insurance Fund. If you go to big hospitals, you find that they have an office there, or they have a desk there. So that for you to process your NHIF, you don't have to go to their office. You can just go to the next office. You're told the NHIF office is right there. Right. So you go there and they finalize your work, and it makes it very easy for you to process all these things. So something like that can actually happen, where we are given some of the prosecutors to be part of EACC, not as the staff of EACC, but them being in close proximity. We can work together and get these cases processed faster and get them to court. So these are some of ways that we can actually make the process much faster than it is now. Okay. And there are many countries that have done this, and it is working. So I don't see why it shouldn't work for us.
And I think a thorny issue is the matter of political interference. And I'd like you to expound on it just briefly, because the Mtuwetu mentality is one of the issues we face as a country. If someone from a certain community is being questioned by EACC, we'll see, fellows from the same community perhaps come out in defense. This is politically instigated and whatnot. And I think it recently happened with the case of the former Kakamega governor, Wycliffe Oparanya, where we had of, sounds that perhaps the president is heading to Kakamega later on. This is a way to calm the waters before he arrives in that county. What say you about the political interference question? Because this is definitely an issue that even before you took office, we had cases which were allegedly watertight, but at the end of the day, they collapsed due to what the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution mentioned as perhaps coercing an investigative officer here, there, gave a wrong remark that, folds the case completely. What say you about the political interference question?
Political interference, let me say, is a reality. It's a reality because of the nature of politics. Now, we at the Commission, what we have chosen to do is not to allow that to happen. You will get calls from individuals who are saying, go slow on this case, or do this or the other. That is normal human nature. Okay. I'm sure if you have a case, even as Rogers, you will want to find out who could help us, and if you have a tall uncle, they will make a call somewhere. So that is normal. What is important is what do we do with those calls? Okay. How do we respond to them? That is what should worry people. Do we take them into account? Do we change our investigation because we have got a call? That I can assure you we don't. Do we get calls? Yes, we do. Do we get people coming to visit? Yes, we do. But what do we do with them? We have a very clear mandate that we want to fulfill on behalf of Kenyans, and therefore, no matter how much pressure we get, we try our best to follow the procedure, and we just let these people know that if this person is innocent, the system will get them out. If they are guilty, let them serve their due consequence of what they have done. Okay. When people are going to steal resources, they don't steal on behalf of the tribe. They don't steal on behalf of the party. these people steal resources of the public on their own behalf. So why is it that when a person is arrested, then the community comes? Unless you have elected this person to go and steal for you.
Okay.
So that is a very wrong perception. And I think it is something that Kenyans seem to be getting used to, but it is very wrong. So don't go shouting on behalf of a person simply because they have been arrested or are being probed by EACC. Allow them to go through the due process.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of due process, and this intertwines with, the political goodwill in terms of the fight against corruption. We recently heard from the head of state, President William Ruto, and some of his sentiments might perhaps undermine the independence of such institutions like the EACC, at least according to critics. Mambo ni matatu, either jela, ama utoke Kenya, ama uende binguni. How does this sentiment by the president, and how do you look at it in terms of those proclamations? Does it help in the fight against corruption? Does it hinder the independence of such institutions? What do you make of the president's remarks in regards to corruption?
Well, I've not spoken to the president to find out what he exactly meant.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to second guess what he meant. But if that can instill some fear and cause somebody somewhere not to steal the resources, so be it. But we do not rely on those kinds of sentiments. Like I said, we try to do our things in a very professional manner. So that even if somebody was to point and say, Jesse here is doing this and that, we will not just run after you because of that. We will do due diligence, and where there's nothing, we do send case files to the public prosecutor and say, there was this case that came to us, we have looked at the evidence, and quite a number of files that we return and we say, this case needs to be closed. There's no evidence to any wrong that points to any wrongdoing.
Okay.
So we let me put it simply, we do not follow the politics. Politicians will be politicians, whether it is at the presidential level or at the lowest MCA level. They are free to play their politics, they are free to do what they are saying, but as I said, I don't know what the president meant by what he said, but if it adds any value in terms of fighting corruption, it is a positive thing.
Interesting. Let's shift focus in earnest to something that people still talk about in the streets, that corruption at times fights back. And I'm privy to some information that the EACC recently wrote to the Water Cabinet Secretary, asking her to suspend the CEO of Athi Water Works Development Authority, who is under investigations for procurement fraud involving billions of public funds. And unfortunately, this particular person is still in office, at least as per my investigations right here. So is this a case of corruption fighting back? How would you put it in a way that Kenyans understand a person who is currently being investigated for fraudulent use of public funds is still in the same office, in the same capacity, and perhaps has the instruments of power to do the same thing over and over again?
Yes, the issue of the case of the Athi Water is an interesting one, because indeed, yes, the EACC wrote to the CS asking that this person, the CEO, be suspended so that we could undertake our investigations. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and along the way, what has happened, like I said earlier, there seemed to be some misunderstanding or whatever the case may be between the CS and the PS. And so the EACC seems to have been drawn into that drama, if I call it so, making it appear like we made this request at a political behest of either side. And so if you look at the chronology of the events, you will find that our letter, which was written way back in May, by that time, we were not even aware that there was anything between the CS and the PS. I don't even know whether there was anything even at that time, because this, what seems to be a misunderstanding that unfortunately has spilled into the public domain, is a very recent thing, very, very recent thing. So by the time we were making this request to the CS, we were not aware of any political intrigues that may have been going on there. So we were simply saying, according to the law, and the law provides that we can request for a public officer to step aside while investigations are being made. This is what we call taking administrative action. Okay. And there are times when we give these kinds of administrative actions so that the person, the appointing authority, can then suspend this person. Suspension does not mean they are guilty. Yeah. It only means that they are in a place where their continued stay in office may jeopardize the kind of investigation that we want to carry out. And that is the situation that we find ourselves in this particular case, where the CEO presided over procurement of large projects that have become questionable on the way that they were done. Okay. And therefore we are saying, for us to conduct fair and objective investigation, we are requesting the CS to ask the CEO to step aside. We conduct our investigation and then he can come back. You know, so unfortunately we get caught up in the political drama that is there. So it does appear that EACC is part of that. It is not. So
that politics in one way or the other hampers the fight against corruption.
It does. Okay. Like I said that earlier. Politics does.
Well, unfortunately.
But what I would say in situations like this, and I want to appeal to fellow leaders in government, mm-hmm. I think we need to take a collective view of what every one of us is doing. The CS has been given a responsibility of a very critical docket in government. And we are here to support her in doing that work. Okay. We have been given a critical responsibility in this country to fight corruption. We would like her also to give us support so that we do our work. Mm-hmm. And that goes for all of us. We are in the same government. We are not working for different governments. So sometimes what I have seen is a very adversarial approach to relationship between government entities, government officers, and so on, where we seem like some are from the moon, or some are from Mars, and others are from wherever. We are in the same government trying to serve one Kenya. And I would like to appeal to fellow colleagues in different sectors of government. Let's work collaboratively to deliver for Kenyans, okay. Irrespective of which position you hold, whether you feel you are the highest in your particular sector, and some of us are small guys. Just help. Let's work together. Let's join hands together. So, okay. A letter like we have sent out to the CS, I think the easiest thing is to respond and say, I have noticed. If there is anything that is difficult, then they can ask, how can we go about this? And we talk together, discuss, and see how we can go about it in a very amicable manner. She benefits, we benefit, and that goes for any other government entity. If we take this approach, my belief is that we are going to take this country to the next level.
Well, collective responsibility. Right. Interesting that you brought it out. Let's shift focus to perhaps matters in-house and cleaning the affairs within the EACC. Because right here in mainstream media, we've seen reports of Kenyans masquerading as EACC officers and, you know, demanding money from members of the public in the guise of being with the EACC. What exactly are you doing about that to weed out some of those rogue elements that may be, you know, be trending that they're under the EACC?
It is a very unfortunate thing because there's a case recently in Western Kenya where there were two ladies who not only purported to be EACC official, but actually registered an organization that had the name that was very similar to EACC. And they were running this syndicate there for 2 years, harassing traders. You know, they just come up with something and they will pick on you. I guess they do their investigation and find there's something that may not be quite right. So they come, we are EACC officials, they produce their cards and they confiscate goods and things. And they had a go down, a huge go down, where they would keep these goods that they have taken from people. And then you had to pay. They will say, if you want us to release your good, pay 50,000, 500,000 and so on. And they've been doing this for 2 years. We were not aware until somebody blew the whistle on them and we went and arrested them. And indeed, we found the go down was full of goods and they had taken a lot. We have had situations where individuals also do the same. So it's just a very wicked society that we have. So our officers have very clear identification that if somebody comes to you, and we deal in a very processed manner.
Okay.
So if somebody comes to you and purports to be an EACC official, please find out from them. If need be, even call the office.
Okay.
And just find out, is this your officer? Before you give any money to them, because our officers don't demand money. And they're not supposed to. So anybody coming to you demanding for resources, demanding for money so that they can take care of your case, please call the office and let us know. That's how we were able to arrest a few people just in the recent past.
Interesting. So let's go to the big fish issue. And right now I want particulars, because I think that's what Kenyans want to hear. What big fish are you trying to follow, probing, and are you prosecuting? I know you cannot give so much information. It might help investigations.
Yes.
But in terms of numbers, what big high-profile cases, as you mentioned, have you probed and forwarded the files so that we can actually, you know, look at the number of cases that EACC has prosecuted to a logical end, you know?
The numbers of high-profile cases that we have forwarded in the recent past would be almost about 10 or so, depending on what you consider high-profile.
Okay.
We are dealing with cases that perhaps involve hundreds of millions of shillings. Those we would call mega cases. We are dealing with cases that involve billions of shillings. Then there are cases that involve key individuals. Like 9 governors are currently under investigation. Some
current or ex-governors?
Both current and previous.
Okay.
And those, in our view, are high-profile cases. So we have several of such. We have state corporations that are under investigation where billions of shillings have been embezzled. You may have heard, because it was in our report, if you look at our quarterly report, March to June, you will see some of those cases that are listed there. Among them is the Turkana wind project, which it involves billions of shillings. It's already forwarded to the office of the prosecutor for consideration. So the Mombasa in Kilifi, we have a university that was to come up there, and it's really turned out to be just a cash cow, that really nothing was happening. That's a case that is already under consideration. So we have several such cases that are ongoing. We do not have one right now that is already prosecuted and settled. Like I said, the big cases take time.
Okay.
They really take time because of the intricacies of it.
Okay, interesting. It's good to know that they're in the kitchen cooking.
They're cooking, yes.
Yeah, to use those terms. Let's shift focus to the legislative arm of government, because it plays a key part in terms of setting the legislative framework that gives you powers to go ahead. Right now, there seems to be proposed amendments to the anti-corruption law. It would be a disservice to have you here and not get your views as a chairperson of EACC on the proposed changes on the anti-corruption law. What do you make of them?
There are two particular cases that are bills, really, that are being presented before Parliament. Both of them are touching on EACC. One is the procurement law that was proposing that procurement irregularities should be left to the counties to deal with administratively. And our position is that the life of EACC, as it were, is about procurement. If you take away procurement, we have no business. We might as well close shop and go home, because this is the one area where money, Kenyans' money, is stolen through procurement. Whether it is in the inflation of tenders, whether it is irregular awarding of tenders, whether it is like I gave earlier, just taking a project cost from 21 million to 62 million. Those are procurement issues.
Okay.
And so on and so forth. So almost 90% of what we deal with are procurement issues. Even the other thing that you have just talked about is a procurement issue. So when we see our legislators trying to change that kind of a law, instead of making it stronger to weaken it, we wonder whether we are in the same country or not. And so we have forwarded our objection to that kind of an amendment. The second one was to do with people who have been prosecuted or convicted of corruption or under investigation, but particularly those who have been convicted. The proposal was that those people should be allowed to stand for office,
public office,
because it amounts to double punishment. Again, we say, are we serious about corruption and what it does to the country? There are so many Kenyans that can serve this country, so many Kenyans who can serve in different places. Why should you recycle a person who has proved themselves that they are not trustworthy? And you want to bring them back, while Jesse, who is here, could do that job perhaps better. So let these people rest. There are many Kenyans who can do the job. So there is no need for us to recycle people who have already proved themselves to be lacking in integrity. So again, that kind of a law, for us, we see it as not in tandem with our zero tolerance to corruption that we keep singing about. If we are really zero tolerant, nations where they are zero tolerant, people even resign before they are asked to, before they are prosecuted. But here we do all that we can. This person is proved to have done something wrong, and then we come around and say, let them come back. I think it is not in the spirit of what Kenyans want.
Okay, that's well noted. Our time is definitely flying, so we have the final comments, and I'd like you to speak to our viewers, the active Kenyan citizens. And a song by, I don't know, Eric Wainaina, Nchi ya Kitu Kidogo, perhaps paint a picture of the vices in society. And it takes my initiative, your initiative as a Kenyan, to actually root out corruption within my locality. So perhaps a message to citizens on their role in the fight against corruption, because a lot of times we find ourselves pointing fingers at the EACC, forgetting 4 fingers are pointing back at us, you know? So a message briefly.
Well put. I don't know what I can add. But what I can say is this. First of all, something that I've said severally in other quarters, that Kenyans need to associate and link corruption with the challenges that we are facing. That is something that we have not quite linked. That part of the problem, the reason that our economy is as bad as it is corruption. That the resources that were supposed to help us develop and be independent economically goes into private pockets. Money that was supposed to go and buy medicine and put it in our local dispensaries and local clinics and local hospitals has been taken by somebody else. And so when you go there as an ordinary mwananchi, you cannot get the medical services that you require because somebody took that money. The reason that the road that leads to your village is not tarmacked or is never graded is because the money that was meant for that road has been taken by someone. And that's why you are suffering. The reason that your child goes to school and there is no textbook, the teachers cannot be paid, and so on and so forth, is because the money that was meant to do that, somebody stole it. So when we make those connections, then I hope that Kenyans can be more serious about not supporting people who are corrupt, number one. Don't vote them into office. Don't allow them to occupy any kind of public office. Come out and say, this person, we know him, he has stolen from us. Let him not get into office. It is only that kind of collective outcry that will help us to fight this. Then secondly, the Swahili say kidogo kidogo hujaza kibaba. Let me put in a negative way. Sometimes when you give that 50 shillings to a public officer in an office, you don't realize the impact of it because for you it is just 50 shillings. When you give that 500 shillings, when you give 30,000, it's hard that some people are given as much as 300,000 to be recruited into KDF. That money, it adds to billions. I was giving the example of a case that we dealt with recently, where junior officials were being used to just claim per diems, you know, daily subsistence allowances. Little money, 10,000, 50,000, 20,000, 40,000, and so on. When we looked at the cumulative amount that had been stolen from that was 599 million. But it looks like small fish. So when we go for these people, we say, why are you following small fish? But these small fish are the ones who are feeding the big fish. So 599 million gone like that, not in millions, but in 20,000, in 50,000, and so on and so forth. So let Kenyans refuse to participate in that process. Refuse to give that little bribe. Demand services and good services without having to pay again because you are paid through your taxes. That is the only way we are going to fight this. I am reminded of 2003 when Kenyans were arresting police officers who were engaged in bribery. Can we go back there as citizens and say, we are not going to tolerate corruption within my quarters. Okay. I'm not going to participate in this process. You who is an officer, you are not going to participate in this process. If somebody asks you for bribe, be a whistleblower and say there's something happening here. If we have this collective effort, I think we can drive corruption out of this country. And this is what I would want to call Kenyans to do.
Okay. And I'm pretty sure Kenyans will be emboldened once they don't have any doubt that, you know, the cases will be dispensed of within the legal means. So, kazi kwetu, Na pia kazi kwenyu.
Kazi tunafanya.
Exactly. So it's all about zero tolerance to corruption. Not just saying it, but walking the talk. Thank you so much for your time right here, Bwana Chair, as he was just breaking down the strides EACC is taking to ensure the zero tolerance to corruption is enshrined in the society. Asante sana for your time and breaking down some of the work you're doing.
Thank you.
All right, so that brings us to the end of today's edition of Checkpoint. Hope you're adequately informed about the news stories making headlines and equally about this discussion, all to do with the fight against corruption, the steps EACC is taking to get rid of this vice in the country. My name is Jesse Rogers. Have yourself a fantastic start to the week. Good evening.